Stanley noticed it in his ankles first. Not pain, just puffiness. The kind where his socks left a deep line that took an hour to fade. He was 69, retired, still walked 2 miles most mornings, and he figured it was just standing too long in the garden. Then he noticed he was tired in a way sleep didn't fix. And when his doctor finally ran a routine blood panel, one number came back circled. Creatinine, slightly high, not dangerous, not a diagnosis, just a number his doctor said was worth watching. If you're 50, 60, 70 and beyond, there's a good chance you've either seen that number circled on your own labs, or you've quietly wondered what it even means. And I want to tell you right now, you're not alone. And today, we're going to fix what's actually within your control. Because here's what almost nobody explains clearly. Every single day, your kidneys pull roughly 50 gallons of fluid out of your blood, filter it, and send the vast majority of it right back in, keeping only what actually needs to leave. 50 gallons, every day, since the day you were born. And starting somewhere around your 40s, they begin losing some of the tiny filtering units, called nephrons, that do that work. That part is normal aging. That part, we can't stop entirely. But what the newest research is showing is that how fast that decline happens is far more within your control than most people your age have ever been told. And a big piece of that puzzle, maybe the most underrated piece, is sitting in your produce drawer right now. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, I'm going to walk you through the 5 vegetables the research keeps pointing to, why they work, and, just as important, who should be careful with which ones. Stanley's version of this video would have saved him a few months of not knowing what to do with that circled number, because this is one of those topics where eat more vegetables isn't quite enough of an answer. The details actually matter, and I promise you, by the time we get there, you'll understand this well enough to explain it to your own doctor, not just repeat a list you half remember. Here's why this matters more than most people realize. Your kidneys don't just filter waste, they regulate your blood pressure. They balance the minerals in your blood. They help make the hormone that tells your bone marrow to produce red blood cells. When kidney function quietly declines, it doesn't announce itself with one dramatic symptom. It shows up as the ankle swelling Stanley noticed, as fatigue that sleep doesn't touch, as a slow creep in blood pressure that gets blamed on stress, or age, or just how things go now. That vagueness is exactly why this topic gets so little real attention, and exactly why the people who do understand it end up years ahead of everyone else. It's exactly the kind of vagueness that had Stanley chalking his own symptoms up to gardening and getting older, right up until that number came back circled. Let's start with what's really happening inside you as you age, because most people have the story about halfway right. Here's the myth. That kidney decline is just something that happens to you, like gray hair, and there's nothing to do but watch the number climb. I want to gently correct that, because it's not true, and believing it can cost people years of kidney function they didn't have to lose. Stanley's doctor put it more simply than any study ever could. Your kidneys don't fail overnight. They wear down, a little, every single day, for decades. Here's what's actually going on. Researchers looked at older adults and found something called dietary acid load. Basically, how acid-forming or alkaline-forming your everyday meals are, was tied to changes in kidney function over just 1 year. 1 year. Diets heavier in processed meats, refined grains, and salt tend to push your body toward a more acidic internal environment, and your kidneys are the organs stuck cleaning that up every single day for years. Plant foods, vegetables especially, tend to pull that acid load the other direction. They're naturally alkaline forming, which means every time you build a meal around vegetables instead of around processed convenience food, you are handing your kidneys an easier job instead of a harder one. That's the real mechanism. No magic, no miracle cure, just a slightly easier job for an organ that's been quietly doing hard labor for 60+ years. And there's a second piece of this that almost never gets mentioned, so let's pull that thread too. Researchers have also looked at ultra-processed food specifically, not just unhealthy eating in general, but the specific category of packaged, heavily manufactured food, and followed a group of community-dwelling adults, 60 and older, for several years. What they found was that higher ultra-processed food intake was linked to a meaningfully higher risk of measurable kidney function decline, tracked through both serum creatinine and eGFR. This wasn't a small effect, and it wasn't limited to people who were already unwell. It showed up in ordinary older adults living ordinary lives. And this is why it matters for our topic today. It's not only about what vegetables you add, it's about what they quietly displace. Every time a fresh vegetable takes the place of something ultra-processed on your plate, you're pulling on two levers at once, lowering the acid load your kidneys have to buffer, and reducing your exposure to the processed food pattern linked to faster decline. That's a bigger effect than either factor alone, and it's the real reason "just eat more vegetables" keeps showing up across completely different research groups, studying completely different populations. Stanley didn't know any of this yet. What he did was ask his doctor a simple question: is there anything I can actually do? And his doctor said the same thing researchers have been finding for years. Yes, and it starts with what's on your plate. Now here's where it gets interesting, because not all vegetables are created equal here. And this is the part that surprised even me when I dug into the studies. Researchers, using a massive long-term health survey of older adults, found something specific. People who ate more fresh vegetables, as opposed to salt-preserved ones, showed a direct link to a higher estimated glomerular filtration rate. That's the lab measurement, called eGFR, that tells you how well your kidneys are actually filtering. Higher eGFR is the number you want moving up, not down. Fresh, not salt-preserved. That distinction alone matters, because a lot of vegetables in the modern diet come pickled, canned in brine, or loaded with sodium for shelf life. That's not the same food, metabolically, even if it started as the same plant. So keep that in the back of your mind for everything that's coming next. Fresh, or close to it. Not the jarred, brined, heavily salted version sitting on the shelf for 8 months. Stanley started asking his doctor the follow-up questions most people never think to ask. Not just, is it bad, but why does this happen, and can it unhappen? Now, I said 5 vegetables, and I meant it, but I want you to notice something as we go through them. It's not that these 5 contain some secret compound the others don't have. It's that each one checks multiple boxes at once. Low potassium, high fiber, low dietary acid load, real antioxidant content. And that overlap is exactly why the research keeps circling back to this same handful, video after video, study after study. So let's talk about the 5, and I want to walk you through not just what they are, but why each one earned its spot, because I don't want this to feel like a random list. I want you to understand it well enough to build your own plate around it. Cabbage is first, and it's almost boring how underrated it is. It's high in fiber, which matters more than people realize. Fiber-rich diets have been linked in research to a lower risk of chronic kidney disease, likely because fiber helps the gut clear waste products before they ever become the kidney's problem. Think of your gut as the first checkpoint, and your kidneys as the second. Fiber does a lot of the sorting at that first checkpoint, so by the time anything reaches your kidneys, there's simply less for them to deal with. Cabbage also happens to be low in potassium, which is a detail we're coming back to in a moment, because it matters enormously for a specific group of people watching this video. Cauliflower is next, and it plays a similar role, fiber-rich, low in potassium, and it swaps in beautifully for higher potassium starches like potatoes if you're trying to lighten the load on your kidneys without giving up the comfort food feeling of a meal. There's something almost psychological about this one. People associate kidney-friendly with restriction, with giving things up. Cauliflower quietly proves that wrong. Mashed with a little olive oil and garlic. Most people genuinely cannot tell the difference from potatoes on the first bite. Stanley, for what it's worth, was skeptical of that swap until his wife made it without telling him first. Red bell pepper is the third one, and here's your pattern interrupt, because this is the one people are most surprised by. Bell peppers are packed with vitamin C and antioxidant compounds, and they're also naturally low in potassium, which makes them one of the few genuinely have as much as you want vegetables on a kidney-conscious plate. Most people think healthy vegetable and safe for my kidneys are the same category. They're not always. This is one of the rare ones where they overlap perfectly. Onion is the fourth, and I want to pause here because onion carries something most people never think about. It's part of that same low dietary acid load family we talked about earlier, and it brings sulfur compounds that support your body's natural detoxification pathways, the same pathways your kidneys are downstream of. It's also one of those ingredients people already use constantly without thinking of it as health food, which is exactly why it's such an easy win. You don't have to change your cooking, you just have to notice you're already doing something right. And cucumber rounds out the five, mostly water, genuinely low in potassium, and one of the easiest ways to add volume to a meal without adding any real burden to your kidneys at all. If you tend to feel thirsty and a little dehydrated through the day, which becomes more common as we get older, since our sense of thirst gets less reliable with age, cucumber is a gentle way to add fluid through food, without relying on remembering to drink enough water on your own. Stanley admitted he almost never drank enough water on his own. The cucumber, he said, was the change he didn't even notice he needed. Now here's the part of this video where I have to be completely honest with you, because I care more about you being safe than about this video sounding simple. If you have been diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, actually diagnosed, not just a number to watch, potassium and phosphorus become a much more personal, much more specific conversation. Some vegetables that are wonderful for general aging kidneys are ones a person with diagnosed CKD may need to limit, and the right amount is different for every single person, depending on their stage and their labs. That is not something I can respectfully generalize in a video, and it's not something you should take from any video, including this one. That conversation belongs with your nephrologist or your renal dietitian, full stop. Stanley didn't have a CKD diagnosis, so this was more straightforward for him, but he still ran his new grocery list past his doctor first. And that's exactly the right instinct, whether your labs are borderline or not. What I'm walking you through today is what the research shows for general, age-related kidney support, not a replacement for personalized medical care. Okay, deep breath, because I promised you this wasn't just a list. And there's one more piece of the puzzle that made me sit up straight when I found it. There was a study, a real, prospective, randomized trial, the kind that actually tests whether something works rather than just guessing, where researchers gave fruits and vegetables directly to patients whose lab work showed early signs of kidney strain. This was an actual 6-month program where people received produce and, in some cases, cooking instruction alongside it, not a questionnaire asking what people remembered eating. And what they found built on earlier research showing the same pattern. Giving people more fruits and vegetables was linked to a reduction in that kidney strain marker and to slower progression toward more serious kidney disease, alongside improvements in cardiovascular risk factors as well. Here's what surprised the researchers themselves. This wasn't tested on a wealthy, highly resourced population with easy access to fresh produce and nutrition counseling. It was tested in a lower-income community setting, specifically because the researchers wanted to know if this worked in the real world, not just in a lab. And it did. 2 cups of fruits and vegetables a day, sustained over months, moved a real clinical marker in real people living real lives, not people with unlimited time and money to spend on their health. Let that sit for a second. not a supplement, not a prescription. Vegetables, given consistently, linked to a measurable shift in a lab marker doctors use to track kidney health, in people with the same kinds of constraints most of us actually live with. It's the kind of result that makes you stop scrolling and actually read the whole abstract, which is exactly what Stanley did before his own follow-up appointment. That's the kind of finding that should change how you look at your grocery cart. So here's how this comes together on an actual plate, because information without application doesn't help anyone. Start with volume, not restriction. Cucumber and cabbage make excellent bases for a slaw or a simple side salad, and because they're low potassium and high fiber, you can genuinely have generous portions without second-guessing yourself. Layer in flavor with onion and red bell pepper. Sautéed together, they turn almost any protein into a real meal, and you're getting that antioxidant and sulfur compound support without any extra effort. And when you want comfort food, reach for cauliflower before the usual starches, mashed, roasted, or riced. It satisfies that same craving while asking far less of your kidneys along the way. There's a simple way to think about timing it across your week, without turning this into a rigid meal plan you'll abandon in 10 days. Breakfast is usually the hardest meal to fit vegetables into, so don't force it. Focus your effort on lunch and dinner instead, where a slaw or a sauté takes under 10 minutes. If you're someone who eats out a few times a week, the swap is just as simple there. Ask for a side salad instead of fries, or extra sautéed vegetables instead of rice. Small substitutions, repeated daily, are what the research is actually describing, not a dramatic overhaul you do once and abandon by spring. None of this requires a special diet, a supplement aisle, or giving up the foods you love. It requires shifting the ratio, just slightly, toward the vegetables your kidneys are quietly asking for. Stanley made exactly one change after that appointment. He started building his lunch around a big bowl of cabbage and cucumber slaw, with onion and red pepper mixed through it, instead of the sandwich he used to grab without thinking. Small. Almost too small to matter, it seemed at the time. He didn't buy a single supplement. He didn't overhaul his whole diet overnight. He changed one meal and kept changing it, day after day, for 3 months. 3 months later, at his follow-up, his doctor looked at the same panel and said something Stanley didn't expect to hear. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. That's not a guarantee for you. That's not how any of us should talk about the body. Everyone's starting point is different, and everyone's path looks a little different. I'm not going to stand here and promise you a specific number will drop by a specific amount, because that's not honest, and honest is the only kind of information worth your time. But it is proof of something simpler and more encouraging. Your kidneys are not a fixed number you're stuck watching climb. They respond to what you feed them, the same way the rest of you does. And I think that's worth sitting with for a moment, because so much of what we're told about aging frames it as something that simply happens to us, a one-way road with no exits. The research we've walked through today tells a different story, not one where you control everything, none of us do, but one where the everyday choices sitting quietly on your plate carry more weight than you were ever told, and where a slightly different lunch, repeated for months instead of days, can show up as a real number on a real lab report. So if you take one thing from today, let it be this. The goal isn't fear about a number on a lab report. The goal is a plate that quietly, consistently, makes your kidney's job a little easier. One cabbage slaw, one sautéed pepper and onion, one cauliflower mash at a time. You have more control here than you were ever told. And it starts with something as unglamorous and as powerful as what's sitting in your produce drawer tonight. If this helped you look at your plate a little differently, stay close, because there's another organ quietly aging faster than people realize, and the surprising habit speeding it up happens almost every single morning, before you've even had your coffee. That one might be even more important than this one. I'll see you in the next video.